Hello, beautiful people. We are back. Welcome. It's the Self Love Show. I'm your host, Dawn Light, and my beautiful co host here, Trish Wright. And we have a lovely, amazing new guest this week, like always. And, for the viewers, before I introduce her, thank you so much for our devoted viewers. I cannot say thank you enough. Deep gratitude for those that tune in weekly. We love you and support you always. And for those new viewers, you can find us here weekly live on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel that you can go check out all the previous shows. And please like, share, and subscribe because it's really important to keep spreading the self-love message far and wide to all those that need it on the planet as we evolve in our consciousness. So, without further ado, we are here to introduce a beautiful soul that's doing incredible work in the world. Her name is Sonja Francis, and I'm going to read her bio for a sec to introduce her. She's a certified astrologer, hi Sonja, and life relationship coach. Her passion is connecting with people and helping them transform their lives. This led her to train as a life coach, and in addition to her lifelong study of astrology, she currently serves dozens of clients across several continents via video chat and phone. Sonja has also created her own online community and daily support system that helps individuals all over the world with their personal evolution and soul's journey. This support system includes daily emails, bi-monthly videos and articles, and a monthly webinar, all geared towards empowerment, a deeper understanding of our own journey, and on how to make best use of what is currently unfolding. Oh my gosh. And we all need that, right? Like, so big.
Definitely.
Welcome, Sonja.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's so lovely to see you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And being live here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. I have questions.
Yes, let's jump in.
Bring your
questions. Bring them up.
And I invite all of our viewers and our listeners to type in any questions that you may have as well.
Yeah.
Just, because we have an expert here, we might as well utilize this time, efficiently.
Exactly.
So I don't know about you or anybody watching, but isn't the world kind of crazy right now?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of movement, and I know there's a lot of shifting. There's a lot of there's a lot of celestial movement, a lot of energetic movement in the world. There's a lot of spiritual movement. There's a lot of psychological growth on the planet. Like, there is just massive changes happening in the structure of reality as well as societies and how we move through the world. So in that, I'm curious have you seen some shifts in I don't know if you do this, but just pick a time and a day in the world. Like today I'm going to do it 10:11 where I'm at and see what the astrology of this moment is, and I'm wondering if you do that, and if you have seen any themes or anything that is kind of like evolving that you've seen over the last maybe, I don't know, year.
Yes.
And maybe what you see is how we can kind of like a preventative maintenance or how we can manage some of our energy. Like, hey, there's all this stuff going on. Yeah.
What do we do now? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such a huge topic, right? Because there is so much going on energetically speaking. And of course, the astrology or the planets are just representing or showing us what that energy is all about, right? It's just a reflection of that. So it's not like the planets are doing anything to us. It's just that the planets are symbolizing certain energies that we can then translate through the language of astrology. And we can say, okay, this is what's going on energetically, and this is where we're at as a collective or also on an individual level, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, since 2020, and 2020 was one of those years where everything just started to come together, and all these new cycles started. With all these planets coming together, and 200-year cycle started, 30-year cycle started, 12-year cycle started. So there's all these different cycles in astrology when planets travel together. they all travel at different speeds, right? And so when they come together in the same sign or the same placement, it begins a new cycle of those two energies coming together. And there was just a lot of that happening in 2020. And so all astrologers all over the world for the last 10 years have already been saying 2020 is going to be a big year. There's going to be a big shift happening, and who knows what, but it's going to be big. Because, with energy, you can't always say how it's going to manifest, but you can see that there's definitely some important energetic points that will influence how society is moving forward or what society is doing at that time, especially with the way the energies were lining up in 2020. It was all about government. It was all about society and how we live as a society. It was all about like our own inner authority. How do we connect to that, or what are we abdicating to other people? How are we, not taking responsibility for ourselves as individual people and as the collective? And so all of that was definitely something that started in 2020. And so now, of course, in 2021, we still have some of that wave is still with us, which it will be probably for the next 20 years. But of course, we're evolving, right? So each year is sort of like an evolution from that starting point from 2020. And this year, for example, there is an aspect between Saturn and Uranus, a square, that forces us to kind of like reinvent ourselves in some way. And of course, that feels scary to a lot of people, because reinventing yourself means that you have to get rid of the old and start with something completely different that feels maybe uncomfortable, maybe scary. So people are in a place of uncertainty, great uncertainty right now. And that's what that symbolizes, that Saturn-Uranus square, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're all feeling a little bit like we don't quite have solid ground under our feet, but we desperately want it. And so there is this sense of like needing to really create a lot of space for ourselves, for other people. Everyone's dealing with this in their own way. Everyone's having their own experience with this. Fear is definitely something that's a big part of that as well. And so people are moving through their own fears the best way they know how to. Some people do it with more grace than others, obviously. And then also some people, when they're scared, they tend to either shut themselves down, or they go into chaos or emotionality. And then what they do is they don't think clearly, and then they're more ready to give away their own power to other people so that they can think for them. And so what we're seeing this year, I think, is that there's just a lot of different I mean, it's also creating sort of like a separateness in some sort, right? Of some sort, where there are different types of camps or different types of thought forms that are being created by different people, depending on, how they're dealing with that energy, and depending on how they're feeling about this, right? Mm-hmm. And how they're connecting with themselves, right? Because if you have a strong core within yourself, and you have a strong sense of who you are and where you're going, you're not going to be as easily rattled and not as easily swayed to take on other people's thought forms, right? However, if you are scared and you don't have a strong core, you're very quickly going to give all of your own inner power to other people's thought forms and everything that you hear, and you're going to pick it up and go, maybe this is something I can grab onto, and maybe this is something that can be useful to me, and so I can feel a little bit less scared, right? So we have to acknowledge that that's something that's going on right now, and we have to be compassionate with ourselves, with other people, and we have to learn how to be okay with being uncomfortable and be okay with living with a collective fear level, right? That is just there right now. It's just there. And we can't ignore that, right? And so, of course, I can do the best I can for myself to kind of minimize how I I move with that fear, right? Because I'm an empath and I'm a sensitive person, so I will feel other people's fears. I will feel the collective fear, and I'm sure you guys can feel that too, right? And so how do we navigate or be kind to ourselves around that, right? Because in the end, you still have to deal with your own direct experience and what's moving through you as a person, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm sorry, long answer to a short.
No. I think that was great.
I'm a talker. I'm sorry.
Oh, no need to apologize. Beautiful.
Hold on. Can we take that back?
You can always interrupt me. Please interrupt me if I go wrong.
Can we just take that back right now? You are allowed to take up space and time and be loud, and you can fill up the space with your love and your kindness and your awesomeness and your anger and all of the things that you are. You can take up space. This is your time.
I appreciate it. And that's what I would say to my client too. So thank you for.
You are welcome here. All of you. And the fact that, okay, you're on. Now I'm on it. Hold on, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
That's me about society in general, is that we've shut children and women up to a point where we apologize for taking up space and communicating who we are and what we're about. And I'm just not allowing that anymore.
Yes.
For taking up space. I'm a stand for letting our voices be heard.
Yeah.
It's now the time where we get to practice equity and we get to practice equality. This is the only way that things shift, is if we're like,
actually
we're fighting in our sovereignty.
Yeah. Practice is actually a really, really great word that you just threw out there, because practicing, we have to practice because we're not used to this new way we're stepping into a new era in a sense, right? And so that means that we're not used to how do we navigate it? How do we move through this? And so we need to practice, like in little ways and in big ways, like how do I move with fear? How do I move with not feeling certain about something? How do I move with, not being heard by somebody else that is thinking in different ways than I do, right? So we're needing to sort of navigate in completely new ways, right? And take care of ourselves.
I was just speaking to my therapist a little while ago, and she's really funny. But I was like, what's really annoying? I was like, it's annoying that you can be aware of what needs to change, and not that awareness doesn't actually make the change. What makes the change is practice, because you've created a neural pathway. You've created a whole plethora of years of a habit that you get to change over the next however many years it takes. And I was like, it's just so annoying. She laughed, we laughed together. But that's the truth, that most of humaning, I call it, is practice. We practice new ways of being. And especially when the world completely shifts in 1 year, and we all collectively get to practice new ways of being. That's what it is. Being a human is the practice.
Yeah, and it's work.
Take it back. It's effort. It takes a lot of energy to move this matter, literally the matter. And I
like the word spiritual dedication.
I love that word. Yes, that's
beautiful. It's more like an alignment with the higher part of yourself that is desiring to be birthed.
Yes.
And that gives the energy and momentum, because the word work can have a very deep pushback, right? But spiritual commitment to self and the greater self emerging through whatever the difficult construct that's been there, and that you're breaking through and you're humaning through it, and your new self to be birthed, right?
Yeah.
Spiritual dedication.
Commitment to your own evolution, right? And to in a sense, once you're committed to your own evolution, you're also committed to everybody else's.
Right, because it's a win-win for everybody. When you say yes to yourself, you're saying yes to the highest and best good for everyone.
Right.
Yes.
It's all connected. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love what you do in the world. It's really beautiful what you said, and I really want to source back to the parts, because you were mentioning like the planets and the alignments, and I study astrology. It's not my profession, but I'm really been interested for many, many years in it, and I follow it and listen to it. And it's interesting because I'm born into the sun sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn literally was Pluto was heavy in Capricorn for, it's moving out now and moving into Aquarius, but and then also Chiron, my Chiron in my birth chart has been in Aries, and that Chiron is in Aries right now. So it's been a deep, you too? So it's been a really powerful, deep, transformative time in my own life, right? Like my father died. It's like, it's really the house of other people's money and all these things, right? When Capricorn and Pluto, like it was really intense, and it's about societal structures breaking down and finances changing, and we saw that completely in the world, right? And it's like I was personally affected in my own way, with my own journey and my family and all the things, right? Yeah. And it's been deeply transformative for me, and really I stand in the light of like, wow, I celebrate my strength of heart that I've been through this journey. And I celebrate everyone's strength of heart that they've been through in this journey.
I mean, honestly, anybody who's alive right now and who's on this planet, they need to pat themselves on the back and go, yes, like, good for me for being here right now, because we all came for that reason, right? We came for the reason of making the shift together, and really connect with as many people as we can to create a shift that is heart-centered and wholehearted, and that moves us away from just three-dimensional thinking into a much bigger place, right?
Yes.
And I think it's challenging because we've been in this three-dimensional place for such a long time, and so that jump, of course, is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen even over the next 5 years, but it will happen. And as we're moving, into that place of acknowledging that more and more, and seeing the strength in that, seeing the strength in moving in that direction, how beautiful that actually is. The more people can come together and commit to that journey, right? The faster it will go, so it is definitely, it is a collective effort, but of course you cannot influence the collective. You can only influence what you're doing yourself. You can inspire other people, right? So like just being able to do your own work and inspiring other people with your own work, and connecting as much as possible to like-minded people who are doing that work as well. And that's what you guys are doing, right? And I mean, I think that's awesome. That's really great, That's
important. It is important, and it reflects to others. It gives others permission when you show a part of your inner work that you've completed, and you completed on we call it in spiritual psychology lingo, we call it soul line, so you've completed a soul line curriculum. And right. like the completion of my father transitioning, and like me finishing graduate school and all that deep curriculum was a real soul line completion for me, because we had such a tumultuous, hard relationship. And so that was a check mark on the soul line, right? And so we're all having this graduation moment on the planet with our soul line curriculum that we've come here to work through. And so astrology can give us a good window. This is why I love what you do, because it really can give you that angle of like, here's possibly where your lessons lie, right? To kind of look here, right? Wouldn't you say, like someone's personal chart?
Yeah, no, I mean, clearly I'm very passionate about astrology because that's what I do. But I would say astrology is one of my favorite tools for the reason that it literally shows you exactly where you're at any given moment in time. And you can literally navigate your own, what you're experiencing internally, externally, who you are as a person, from your birth chart. I mean, you can see so many things. And of course, what's important with astrology is to remember that this is a tool. It's not the truth, right? It's a tool. And so it definitely is important. How do I use this tool? The how-to is very important, because if you're using a tool to beat yourself up with it, you can do that, but it's not going to really serve you much. But if you use a tool to support you, to empower you, to make your life better, to evolve to that next level, that's a great way to use any tool, right? Whatever that tool is. So even if it's like, just some kind of coaching technique that you're using with your clients or whatever, if you're not supporting people in their empowerment process and in their evolution, then that tool is no use, right? Or, well, it's not really of good use.
Yes.
So, I always say with astrology, be very mindful how you use the tool yourself if you are interested in astrology. And if you are listening to astrologers out there in the world, be also very mindful who you listen to, because not everybody is going to have the consciousness to use the tool of astrology in a way that serves and that moves into a heart space. Some people will use it to guide you towards fear. And you want to be mindful of that and conscious of that and pay attention to that. When an astrologer guides you towards fear, just notice it and go, oh, okay, well, I don't need to go there. I don't need to go towards fear, right? Like I can go with this in a whole other way, because the truth with astrology is it's just an interpretation. It's a language, right? It's an interpretation of planetary energies. And the energies can be interpreted in higher vibrational ways and in denser vibrational ways. And so when we interpret planets or planetary transits, or even just stuff that's in your own birth chart, we get a chance to convey to the client, like, this is how that's the highest vibration of how it can play out, and this is the densest vibration of how it can play out. And it's really up to you how you want to be using that energy, because you are still the creator. You have free will completely. And you can choose what you want to be choosing to do with this information, right?
Yeah. Bring more consciousness into those areas and like really show up in a conscious way with yourself and notice. Like, I really it was so helpful to see the stuff in my birth chart and to like navigate 2020 and see the parallels unfolding, that it was all there in the communication, the language, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is miraculous and amazing. And wow, I can navigate it a little better because I knew this was that I was aware. It was just like, oh, this makes complete sense.
It really helps a lot with acceptance, I have found. And acceptance is such an important thing in right now in the way we're living and we're moving through. We need to be very present to what is, right? Not what we wish it to be, not where we wish to be, but what is so, right? And that's very important. And I think astrology has this gift to sort of like show us, okay, these are what the energies are doing today or this month or this year. And so this is what's so, right? These are the energies. And so then we can be a little bit more like, oh, okay, this is bigger than me, right? This is, the energies are unfolding in that way. And so even though I'm the creator, I can create within that framework, within that energy framework, so that I can be more in alignment with what is actually so. Bless you, Trish.
Bless you.
The silent sneeze.
So yeah, does that make sense? I mean, it's just just really, it really supports people, I find. I mean, those who are interested. Obviously, it's not a tool for everybody, and I'm aware of that. Not everybody's going to be like, yay, astrology, but whatever tools we're all using, right, to navigate through these unknown waters that we're currently in, it has to be a tool that helps us be in acceptance, that helps us find a heart-centered connection to what's going on, and that helps us evolve. That helps us go to the next place in a high vibrational way.
That's true.
Right.
I've been thinking a lot about. I've been thinking a lot about people. I think a lot about people all the time. I don't know. You all probably think a lot about people all the time, but I think a lot about the people on their spiritual path, and I think a lot about societies and suffering.
Yeah.
And what's been up for me the last, I don't know, month, probably. What would you say, a month, maybe 2 months, Dawn?
Yeah.
Is thinking about this idea of how to help people increase their vibration when they don't have access to this level of, they don't have the understanding or the access to, you know, astrology, or to the psychological tools, or the spiritual access, because there's so many steps to take there. And I've been thinking a lot about how to just vibrationally help them lift as well. I mean, the planet is shifting. Like, I mean, there's no doubt that like we're literally in a planetary evolutionary shift, as well as a whole spiritual shift. That's why it's, you know, there's no doubt that that's happening. I just think about how to make it, I'm going to use the word easier for a lack of better term, or more comfortable for people who aren't maybe as prepared as you and I, or the people watching. It's like we've all been on this spiritual path, and then like, well, on a you know, celestial level, or on a astrology level, like, what would you say to do? Like, how would you say that we can all help the people who are maybe not as conscious of spiritual practice?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot too, obviously, because it is heartbreaking sometimes to see people in so much fear and in their reactivity to that, you know?
Yes.
And so one thing that I have found is really important is to keep my own heart wide open for those people, because sometimes what can happen too is when you encounter that, you know, encounter a person's reactivity or their fear, it can make you, you know, go into a defensive place, or it can make you shut down, or it can make you want to run away, or, you know, you can have your own reactions to that as well, right? Because we're all just human beings. And so of course we all have our reactivities and our ways in which we get triggered, you know? And I think when I encounter fear and sort of like separativeness from other people, I try to just remind myself that, you know, that is where they're at currently, and I can still love them without needing to connect with them, right? Mm-hmm. So I can be me and separate as me, but I can still give them my compassion and my love, because they're in fear and because they're in a place where they can't really handle it any better than they're doing it, right? Because the truth of the matter is, if they could handle it better, they would, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, if people are reactive and they're saying things that are cruel or that are, you know, not helpful to hear, then they're doing that because that's all they know how to do in that moment, right? Yes. Doesn't mean that it might, maybe it will shift for them. Maybe they will learn how to get to a place where they can communicate better or interact better or be less reactive. But in that moment, that's where they're at, right? So just allowing people to be where they're at, I think giving people permission to not be awakened, giving people permission to not be in the spiritual path, and to know that they're still loved, you know, to know that they're still part of that collective, and that they're still gonna raise with us, even if they're not on that active path with us, right? Because the truth is, it doesn't require 100% of the world in order for us to get to that next level. It takes about 5%. And that's all it takes, because that 5% is that wave that we need. And I'm getting goosebumps just saying that.
Yes.
That wave that we need is that ripple effect that we need to allow that shift to take place. So we have to remember, we don't need 100% of the population to be on board for this to happen, right? Yeah. And I also always say to people who are scared, and, you know, there's a lot of people that I know are on a spiritual path and are very conscious people who are also scared right now, right? So it's not just people who are not spiritual who are scared. It's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I always say to those people, you know, like, what we have to remember is that higher vibrational energy is sustainable. It sustains itself. It doesn't need anything to sustain it. It just is. It sustains itself. And therefore, it can outlive any kind of denser vibration that we're currently seeing or experiencing. Because denser vibration does not sustain itself. It needs to be fueled, and it takes effort to stay in the denser vibrations, right? So that's something I'm saying to people, because I want them to understand, like, even though they're seeing things or hearing things right now that feel that feel really heartbreaking or that feel like scary to hear or to encounter or to connect with, just know that this is temporary. This stuff is not sustainable. And it might be sustainable for a little bit, but it requires a lot of effort for people to sustain it. So of course, whatever is natural and organic, which is love and just isness, is completely organic, right? So if we just know that that is something that will automatically be in a much, has much more power, right? I mean, love has much more power than fear. And the moment we can shift ourselves from away from fear and recognize that, fear is only valuable when there is an immediate threat. And by immediate threat, I mean literally like a tiger standing in your living room, or like somebody pointing a gun at your face, right? That would be like an immediate threat. That's when fear is valuable. But any other situations, fear is really just a way for us to shut ourselves down and to keep ourselves away from our heart-centeredness, and that's not really helpful. So I always say to people, especially the last 15 months or so, I've been saying to people, manage your fears, really pay attention, be conscious when you're in fear, when you're being scared, because sometimes it can be so subtle. Fear can be very subtle sometimes. People don't even know that they're scared, right? They don't even know that they're in fear. And sometimes it can be very, very big and very obvious. But when it's very subtle, that's when it's the most damaging in a way, because when we don't know we're in fear, then we're going to behave in a way that that reflects that without being conscious of that happening, right?
It's so sweet to hear you share just the foundation of compassion. I think that's so important, and I love that's the advice that you're giving. Is it really is? It's like, be compassionate and just be loving where people are, and managing your fear.
And also, if you can't be compassionate, if you can't be loving, be kind to yourself about that too, right? Because we're human beings, right? We have our reactions, we have our triggers. I've been, these past 15 months, I've not always been in compassion 24/7, right? I've had moments where I was triggered. I had moments where I got scared. I had moments where I was angry, right? And these are all just emotions that are natural to experience when things are so out of whack and when things feel so so uncertain and so in this big shift that we're in, right? When we're in this place, when we experience other people having reactions as well, it's normal to be human, right? It's normal to be human. So we need to allow ourselves to be human, be kind to ourselves, just acknowledge, like, I'm a human being, and it's okay for me to have, days where I'm not able to be compassionate too, right? But
that would be unrealistic,
right?
It would be a totally unrealistic, as much as we all want to believe that we're monks and that we can be epically compassionate all the time, it is again practice. And
absolutely, it's a practice. Yes,
it's a practice. So I want to throw a curveball, because I tried to warn you that there's a lot of curveballs.
That's all right.
So for the people who are watching, and maybe you have had your birth chart read, or have any, or maybe you don't know what a birth chart is. Sonja shared a birth chart with me, but I actually have mine. And would you want to give me a 3-minute overview of what my birth chart looks like?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's a really funny one.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
All right. And then maybe we can give Dawn a couple minutes. And so I share this for others to be able to see kind of maybe what you do, and how, and again, this is like a breath of your work, just to
it will be a little teaser, of course, because a regular reading would take way over an hour. So obviously in 3 minutes, I'm not going to be able to do a lot, but I think what I would like to focus on is maybe self-love, right? And just to point out in the chart where that shows up, and where we can look at self-love in your chart, Trish, and maybe if we have time to also look at Dawn's chart and look at that in her chart
I'm
as well.
pulling it up as we talk.
Okay. So here you go.
Sounds good.
This is mine. Here you go.
Okay. How fun. Okay, astro.com. Very nice.
It's just, this is the one that I've used before.
Yeah. No, that's good. So I just need to be able to see it because the screen is a little bit smaller, and my eyesight is no longer as good as it used to be.
So how can I help you?
So yeah, no, actually, if you can just show me the wheel, because I don't need the writing on the side, really. I just need to see the wheel. If you can make it bigger, can you make it the wheel bigger? Is that possible? I don't know.
I don't know if I can make it bigger. Oh, I can make it smaller.
Let's see. That's right now it's too small for me to see.
Is it better here?
That's good. Okay, that's definitely better. Okay. So if we were just going to point out around self-love, right? We would obviously want to look at Venus, because Venus is the planet of love, and Venus has two functions. Venus has the function of self-love, and it also has the function of loving another person, right? But in order to love another person, we first have to love ourselves, right? And so the function of Venus is very much like learning how do I achieve self-love so that I can share love with another human being, basically have a relationship, whether that's a partnership or an intimate relationships or a friendship, where I can share that love that I already have for myself. So in your chart, Trish, your Venus is in Scorpio in the 4th house.
Is that right here?
Yeah, down there. Yeah, at the very bottom. Exactly. Your Venus is in Scorpio in the 4th house, conjunct Mercury and Pluto, it looks like. So, well, I would say your ability to love yourself was challenged early on in life, right? There was some challenges and some traumas around that. But I think as you are working, and since you are someone who you work on yourself and you do therapy and you're a coach and all that stuff. So I'm just going to make the assumption that you've been working through some of that trauma already. Mm-hmm. And basically that means that you have a fierce capacity for self-love. If you want to step into that, it's there. This complete 100% commitment to yourself and your self-love. But it needs to be coming from a very authentic place. It needs to come from a place of totally accepting all of who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. Right? So it has to be your emotion, all of your emotionality, all of your behavior patterns, or anything that you have been adapting or learned to do in order to feel okay and to feel safe in the world. Like, you have to embrace all of that in order to really get to that place of self-love, right? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And I could say more. I could say more, but did you want to move to Dawn's chart, or?
I don't know how to share it is the problem. I have it on another screen. It's there. I just don't.
Can you send it to me?
I'll try. I don't know how.
Either Facebook or an email?
You can attach it in an email. If I took a screenshot of
me to pay money. I tried to use Astrolab, and it's like all I have it is on the screen itself.
Well, how about
screenshot?
Control-Shift-4? That's a screenshot.
Say it again.
Control-Shift or Command-Shift-4 if you are on a Mac.
Command-Shift-4.
Do you see the little thing?
And then you have to drag it so that it selects the screen. It selects this.
It's not letting me do it. Oh, wait,
you can also do Control-Shift-5. Try Control-Shift-5, and then a window will pop up, and you can make the window bigger, and you can make a screenshot of that.
It's not doing it.
Okay. All right.
We'll do it.
Well, you can just tell me.
Where's the moment thing kind of triggers me a little bit.
Tell me where your Venus is. Tell me what signs your Venus is.
My Venus is in Capricorn. I wish that I could send you Here,
And what house is it in?
I tell you what, I'll do this. This is what
Yay, yeah.
This I can do. I love that I just figured it out. Yay. I'm sending it to you, Trish.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah, I didn't mean to spring that on you. I didn't know if you had it already or if, yeah.
So your Venus is in Capricorn in what house?
That I'm not clear on how. Houses. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll take a look at the chart.
Give me 1 second. It's coming.
Once Trish pulls it up, I'll take a look at the chart and I can tell you.
It's a unique chart. Like it's all on one side. It's interesting.
All right. Very good. Very good. It's all good. I mean, let me talk a little bit about Venus while you're pulling up the chart, so people can kind of like hear a little bit more about that planet, right? Because I think Venus is sort of like one of those planets that has a lot to do with personal love. You know, it has to do with how do I love, right? How do I love myself? How do I love another, right? And so wherever we have Venus in our chart, whatever sign and house it's in, whatever aspects it's making to other planets in the chart, so you can see how it's really layered. It's very complex astrology in that way, because we're complex human beings, right? I mean, how we love ourselves, how we love others, it's not simple, right? For nobody. It's always a complex thing. Yeah. And so it also shows up in that complex way in someone's astrology chart, right? Because there's always, circumstances or the way you were raised or how you saw love being transmitted between your parents, for example.
Right.
You saw love being given to you as a child, right? I mean, these are all things that imprint something in us, and that it's a conditioning, right? I mean, we get
attachment theory.
Yeah, it creates the attachment theory, probably.
Right, exactly. And it either helps us to have an easier time with connection with other people, or it will make it a little bit more difficult, more challenging for us to connect. And so we have to then learn, if it is challenging, we have to learn, how do I overcome these challenges? Because one thing we have to remember with challenges is that challenges are not a bad thing in our chart. Challenges just mean that we need to work with that energy and make some effort there and overcome what's there so that we can move to that next level. And it's usually the stuff in our chart that actually helps us evolve the most, right? When we have any challenges in our chart, that's the stuff that's the juiciest, the squares. Yeah.
Squares. Yeah.
So let me take a look at see where your Venus is. Okay, so we have Venus up here in the 10th house in Capricorn at the top of the chart. Also conjunct Mercury. Interesting. You both have a Venus-Mercury conjunction. So communication of love and self-love is very important to both of you. And then you also have the sun there. So you have Sun, Mercury, Venus. So I would say, love and self-love is very much connected to what you experience with your father or with an authority figure in your life. So that really formed your early experience of self. And so what's important in this, in the evolution of you and in the growing up and in the being an adult, because you're already an adult, obviously, in the being an adult is that, you need to own it yourself. You need to, rather than seeking love outside of yourself, you need to really own and know that love is your personal journey that you need to become the authority figure of yourself. Right?
Yeah.
It's like
my language. It's been my whole spiritual journey in this life.
Yeah. Yeah. And Capricorn is, when Capricorn is involved in a spiritual journey, not all Capricorns are, but if you are, that really is a sign of very highest accomplishment of spiritual, connection with things, because Capricorn never gives up. Capricorn always keeps going, and Capricorn is not afraid to do the work. So as a Capricorn person, you understand that challenges are there to help you get to that next level. Yes. You're not afraid of challenges as a Capricorn. Right. And I can't really see what all the aspects are, but I can see you have moon in Virgo. So I can see there's a trine here between your moon and your Mercury and your Venus. So it looks like that the women in your life, or female energies in your life, are definitely supporting that journey for you. And they're supporting the journey to evolve, to get to that next level, to help you become an expert at self-love and at love and loving connection, right?
This is so awesome.
Yay.
Yay.
So that's just a little bit of a quick.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And now we just talked about Venus, right? And
right.
the rest of the chart, I mean, there's so much more to say about everybody's chart, right? Because it is complex. There's a lot of layers.
It's a really beautiful place of just like a little like a breath of like, hey, this is what part of the just a brief part of a reading could look like for you.
Yeah.
And
no, thank you so much for that. I think it gives our viewers a real expanded viewpoint of like how to work with the chart, and
absolutely. And of course you can also learn how to do this yourself, right? Like everybody, I mean, not everybody might have the inclination to want to learn it themselves. They might just want to get a reading from an astrologer. But if you have the inclination, if you're curious about astrology, you can learn how to, just like you did, Dawn, right? Like you have an interest for it. You can actually take classes. And I actually wanted to share that I have a free class right now on my website that is called the Intro to Soul-Based Astrology. And you can watch that for free on my website right now. And it gives you sort of like a sense of how do you connect with all these energies. And if you also want to check out, there's another free class called How to Read Your Birth Chart. And that's another one that you can watch for free as well on my website. So there's two classes on my website that you can watch for free. If you're interested, if you're inclined to want to study astrology, I recommend taking a look at those.
And here you go. Oh,
yeah, I just shared it. Yeah,
I was working on it.
Yeah.
So would you like me to pull up the last one that you shared, or like the last
chart?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you guys like me to talk a little bit more about astrology, or do you guys want to have? Are there questions from people that are watching, or do you guys have more questions for me? I don't know.
Questions from the audience, but I'd love to move into a part where you kind of give give your like tool or your sharing.
Talk a little bit about what I'm doing, right? Yeah. Yeah. So let's do that. Absolutely.
Okay. Here you go. I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So, the theme for today was how can astrology help us love ourselves more, and how can we deepen that love? And one thing that I want to say right from the get-go is that, reading your astrology chart is like the first step to understanding yourself a little bit better and understanding how the energies work within you and how you can connect to that place of self-love, just like I demonstrated a little bit with Dawn's and Trish's chart. But also, the astrology is just the first step, right? So that gives us sort of like an overall map or an overall view of what's available to us and what we can do with all of that. However, if we want to, if you want to go to a deepening place with self-love, if we want to have a true direct experience of that in our lives, looking at our birth chart may not be enough, right? Because the birth chart is just the first step. And so that's also why I do coaching healing sessions with people, because I have found that combining astrology as a tool and understanding your own chart first, but then also working with more of a coaching tool where you can then guide people through, some of the barriers that people have in connection with self-love, or certain belief systems that are in place where we get stuck or we get pushed back to really get to that deepened place of self-love, right? We all have those, right? And I have them too, right? I'm not exempt from any of that. So I know that using some deeper work and deeper tools has really supported me to continue that journey of self-love after understanding my own chart, right? So I guess what I would like to do, maybe Trish, can you pull up my birth chart for a moment?
Yes, I can.
I would like to share my chart right now, because I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about what I mean by what I just said, right? In terms of like the chart versus the deepening of that, right? So in my chart, I don't know if Trish is able to pull it.
Just 1 second. It just takes a couple button-y clicks. 1 second. There you go.
I'm getting a bit warm. Good. Okay, so if we look at my birth chart, right, what we can see here is that my Venus is in Gemini in the 8th house. So I don't know if you can point towards the 8th house with your cursor, Trish. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So right there is my Venus. So just knowing, right, that Venus is in Gemini in my chart in the 8th house has been the greatest of revelations for me when I was in my 20s. And that's how long I've been studying astrology. I've been studying it since I was 19. So when I was like, I think I was 20 when I first got an actual like printout reading from somebody in the mail. That was before the online experience. That was pre-internet. So I received this reading in the mail, and she was talking about the woman who gave me that reading. She was talking about all the different planets in my chart and what they all represent and what they all mean. And when she talked about Venus, and also I should say Venus is the most important planet in my chart because I'm a Libra rising and I'm a Taurus sun sign. And both of those signs are ruled by a Venus. And so Venus is a very dear planet to me, of course. And so understanding my own Venus, my own ability to love myself and to love others or to have these relationships with other people is very important to me, right? And so with Venus in Gemini, what she said in that report was like, the grass is always greener on the other side. You always want what you don't have. You always are looking for other new experiences. You always wanted to hop into this place and into that place. And at the time when I was 20 years old, I had not yet had a long-term relationship with anybody. I've barely had more than a month of a relationship with someone, because I was always kind of like jumping around and looking for something that was more than what I had, And I read this and I was like, oh my God, that explains so much about me. And I was so grateful, because as I read that, I was able to understand, oh, this is how I operate. This is how my Venus operates. And it's okay. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to be different than that. That's totally fine. And I have to tell you, the moment I realized that, a year later, I started a long-term relationship with someone because I was so much in acceptance of that energy inside of me. So when I was 21, I started my first long-term relationship. And so it was, and also I should say, I do have Saturn also in Gemini in that same house. So for me, having intimate relationships with other people, because the 8th house has to do with intimate relationships, having intimate relationships with people is very important to me. Having Venus there and having Saturn there, because Saturn is the planet of karma, and it is the planet of, you need to put some work into this, girl. You need to put some effort into this, because this is what you're to do. This is what this physical lifetime is about for you, intimate relationships and communication, right? So Gemini is communication. 8th house is intimate relationships. So for me, that house is a really, really important house, right? Now, the other placement that we can look at in my chart is the 2nd house, right? So Trish, if you could just put the cursor towards the 2nd house, which is over there. Yeah, right there. So the 2nd house is the house of self-worth. It's the Taurus house, and it has to do with how we love ourselves and how we value ourselves and the talents that we bring into the world. Now, I have Neptune in the 2nd house, which means that I have a very vague idea of self-love. It's very sort of like, okay, it's well, I'm very spiritual. Of course, I love myself, but it's like, do I love myself? I don't know. Like, it's just very sort of like foggy to a certain degree, right? With Neptune in the second house. So the self-value actually gets created for me by being compassionate with myself, by being accepting of myself, because these are the higher vibrations of Neptune, right? Self-love, love, universal love, compassion, and acceptance. These are the higher vibrations of Neptune. So if I can give that to myself, then my connection with myself and my ability to love myself is going to be strengthened 1,000-fold, right? So when you have Neptune in your second house, that's something to remember. If any of the viewers do, just know that that's the way you can move with that energy, so you can really have a stronger connection with yourself and not be so confused by who you are and how you want to love yourself, right? Now, let's get to the next step. So this is the astrology chart, right? And so we get a lot of information via the chart, right? That's just information that we're getting. We're getting an understanding. We're getting sort of like a bigger picture of like, this is how I operate. This is who I am. Now, but what do we do with that information, right? And that's where the next level comes in. This is where the part comes in on how can we deepen that love, right? Because just me knowing that I am that way is not going to deepen the love by itself, right? And this is what we talked about earlier with like practice, right? Like we need to practice, and we need to actually do things that are where we can actually deepen that experience for ourselves, right? And so I think that's where coaching comes in. And as Trish and Dawn, right? Like that's such valuable stuff, right? To be able to receive coaching, to give coaching. I mean, these are all things where we can really support each other, right? And so one of the things that I've learned through a lot of coaching and therapy, and, I've done a ton of that stuff, is that, for me, it is very important to really ground myself in being communicative about my own love with myself, but also my love with other people. The communication is a big part of that because of my Venus in Gemini. And so if I, as a child growing up, that was actually something that was not readily available to me. I was never really told that I was loved by my parents. And I wasn't really verbally encouraged in terms of like, making loving connections, And so that's something that I really kind of had to learn on my own. And as you can see also in my chart, I don't know, Trisha, if you can point to Neptune is exactly opposite my Venus, right? I don't know if you can see that, because Neptune is in the second house and then Venus is in the 8th house, and they're exactly opposite each other. And so that indicates that there's some kind of confusion around how I can receive love or how I can give love to other people, right? And so that's something I directly experienced growing up. It was very confusing for me because I loved my parents, but yet I felt like I wasn't loved. And so I had this confusion around why, like, how is that even possible? Like, because even as a child, you sort of have a very basic understanding of like that love is natural, and that there needs to be love in life, right? Children are very connected to the heart center, right? So when a child doesn't receive love, that can be very traumatizing and can be very scarring to a child, right? And it can be very confusing as well, because as the child, you instinctively know that love is what should be there, right? It should be there, but yet if it's not there, you're like, what? And you think you're a little crazy. It makes you a little bit crazy, right? It's like
you internalize it to mean certain, you decide in your consciousness, or your unconscious decides, and that's where the imprint occurs, is from that experience. You make it mean something about yourself, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in life.
Exactly.
Well, it's called magical thinking.
right, magical thinking, or it also
children are
creates,
trying to make sense of the world,
yes,
and if they don't get the love or the like whatever nourishment, whether it's emotional or physical, or like it becomes the foundational understanding of the world
exactly,
and the magical thinking, or in some cases, if you have a lot of trauma as a child, tragical thinking, is that it
Yes.
becomes this like experience where you're recreating the like. It took a long time for me to understand that I was moving towards abuse is love, like abusive
hmm,
behaviors equals love, because
right,
that's what I understood. It was mixed signals.
right.
Yeah.
That's your
Yeah.
conditioning. Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, so just understanding that in the chart is powerful and very helpful, but where do you go from there, right? Like, what do you do with that understanding? And so I think what's important is, and this is where the coaching comes in, I think, is that it's very important to also understand it on an emotional level, because astrology helps us to understand things on a from a mental perspective, on a mental level. But
Yes.
what about the emotional part? Because, there's still that little girl, that inner child still carries these emotional imprints with it, right? And so we carry these emotional imprints with us through life, and they get triggered, or we project them onto the world or onto other people, or we do all sorts of things with those emotions, right? So what do we do with that? And so the coaching that I use has to do with really being very inclusive of all of the feelings that are connected to some of these experiences, or to some of these energetic patterns that show up in the chart, to really allow ourselves to see how can we be more accepting of all of that, not just only on a mental level, but also on an emotional level, and welcome all of these parts of ourselves, all of these feeling parts, all of these energetic parts. And as we're welcoming it, how can we then get to a place of greater peace by just releasing it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I work with people is I will guide them with a technique that I have learned myself over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, actually, called the Sedona method. And I will guide them to a place of complete acceptance around certain patterns, certain belief systems. And then as soon as there is acceptance, to allow people to release that, to let it go, to free themselves of these patterns and these beliefs and these ways of doing things, or triggers that we have, right? And then once we start to, I call it peeling the onion a little bit, right? Because you start to peel the onion, and you peel layers back and layers back, and there might be still layers underneath that might, little juicy layers that make your eyes cry still, right? When you get down to it. But you just keep doing this practice. And again, it comes back down to practice, like Trish said, right? You keep peeling back these layers until you come to the core of yourself, where there are no layers left anymore, and where you are completely and utterly yourself. And when I mean yourself, I mean the spirit self, right? Where you are complete awareness, without all the layering, without all the conditioning, without all the, all the triggering and the beliefs that we take on, right? And it's in some ways it can be a lifelong journey, right? It can be a lifelong practice of keeping to peel away those layers, right? Some people can get there quicker than other people, right? Not everybody has the same speed in which they explore their own progress and their own evolution. So I've had experiences with clients where some people, they can just let go like that, and it's boom, and it's gone, right? And it's just like, that's it. And then I have had experience with other clients where it just takes time, where it's just they're a little bit more attached to their conditioning. They're a little bit more attached to their behaviors and to their thinking. And so it takes a little bit longer to peel away these layers and to peel away that onion, right? And to come to that core of of true freedom and true, just light and love. That's really what it is in the end, right?
Acceptance and understanding of the patterning so that it can be completed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you're enjoying what she's sharing, you can click on any of the links that I sent in the chat box. Right now, you can follow her on YouTube. You can follow her on Facebook and Instagram. And I know right before we got on, you were sharing that you were working on this month's full moon.
Yes, I'm writing my full moon text right now, which is unfortunately only available to my members currently. But I do have a new moon video that I do every month that's available to the public. So that's something you can access either on my website or on my YouTube channel. And I also post it on my Facebook fan page usually.
Wonderful.
So that's something that I do every 4 weeks, around a little bit before the new moon becomes exact. So 5 days before the new moon becomes exact, you'll have access to that video. And if you want to have more information, like more detailed info, like daily support or weekly support, or also the bi-monthly with the full moon stuff, that you can become a member of my online community, and I'll support you in that way.
Incredible.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was so full on and so awesome. Thank you for having me. This was really
you're so welcome. I'm so appreciative of you being on the show, and your wisdom is so full of just grace. You can tell you're meant to do this, and I really acknowledge your deep, heartfelt commitment to yourself and your own expansion and your loving, and how you've channeled it into astrology to support others in their loving in that way. I can really feel it in your words and your language. Like, it's the essence is there. Like, I really want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lifelong journey.
I hear you.
I'm still journeying. I'm not done yet.
Yeah, well, here we are in a human body, like we're all on the journey together.
Exactly. We're all in this together.
It's been a lifelong journey for me too. Like, it really has. And I'm so grateful to be on it and doing it and assisting others in their awakening in that way too. It's like, it feels so freaking good. Like, hands down. Like, I'm just so in gratitude and awe of the way spirit works, and the healing that has taken place and that continues to take place, and just the miracles that are always unfolding in people's lives. And I get to witness in my own clients' lives through the work, and the depth, and what keeps coming. It's just, I'm in awe over it.
Yeah, it's rewarding work. I mean, you both know how rewarding it is, but it's so beautiful to be able to support people, and I feel like it's almost like whatever I give to people, I also receive at the same time, because whatever I'm saying to my clients, it's almost like I'm saying it to me too. Because there is sort of like that sense of like, I am you and you're me, right? And whenever I'm working with someone, I'm working with that person, because whatever is coming up for them is something that I need to be working through as well. Or that's at least how it feels a lot of the time, And so I'm always grateful for whatever people come to me with, or whatever they bring to the session. I'm just grateful, because I'm like, oh yeah, I need to work on that too. That's awesome. Okay, great.
I get another angle at it, right? Another window in to like apply another, perception of like really deepening my perception here of what it is, and like releasing anything that could be there, and just really holding in the loving.
Well, we're all the same, right?
We are all the same.
Like we're mirroring each other. Like, we all are doing the work. So it's very likely that we're all working on the same thing. So I've been looking a lot into attachment theory recently, and how the double-edged sword of the anxious and the avoidant is really just the same. It's the same. and it's based in that fear that we talked about at the beginning of the show. So if you missed that part, go back to the beginning and listen to some tools and some conversation about how to manage your fear.
Yes, very important right now. Super, super important.
If you are a female, assigned female at birth, go ahead and connect to the group that Dawn and I run. Mostly Dawn. We'll get real about that, but mostly Dawn runs about how to reclaim your trust for women.
Awesome.
Yes, it's a really beautiful group. We have an amazing, it's growing by the day. Every week it grows and it's so exciting. We have amazing women in there, and more and more will be going live on it. Like Trish and I have been working diligently in the back for many, many months on birthing a program soon. And so, I'm just in the organic divine flow of the process and support. Like Spirit is doing it through me and through Trish. So I know that the time will come where I'll be really live and talking about it more. But for now, please jump into the group. It's a great place. There's great tools and resources in there. There's some meditations. There's some information that I've created. It's a wonderful resource to just really have your voice heard and really express where the hangups have been for you, because we love supporting this direct energy, because trust was my curriculum in life. Like that was my biggest spiritual lesson to come into, to really release all the places I distrusted. And, I had that deep reflection of distrusting my father because he showed up with anger and abuse. So I really learned how to trust myself, right? That whole experience gave me that gift. And now with that, I get to shine that into the world and show others how to come home to that place inside of themselves with where they've distrusted also. And so it's a big conversation, right? Because it has many layers of how it shows up for each person. Like it's different. It could be a love relationship. It could be in work. It could be money. It could be all these different ways that it shows up, but it's the same conversation of like, let's really look here and really apply more love there. And, great tools and resources. It's a wonderful community just to be heard, be seen, be validated for where you are in your life experience, right? Because we're all raising our consciousness together, and that's the opportunity at hand, is to really get in there and be vulnerable where you need to be vulnerable, where you need to be seen, where you need to be held, where you need to have more compassion for self. This is an opportunity to do so, and we invite you in.
I love it.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, just reference one thing I wanted to add in really quickly around what we were talking about, the fear and where people are showing up at this point in time. I really love this concept, is just, lean back into being a loving battery. Like that's how you can support the fear that's being excavated on the earth right now, is show up in your loving, be a neutral loving battery as much as possible. When you're witnessing someone's fear state, that's all you need to do, is show up in the loving and witness and hold in the neutrality and the loving inside of yourself, regardless if you feel completely different of the circumstances or you have different opposing belief viewpoints. That's okay. You have that dignity, and you can give others their own spiritual dignity of their own timeline, of their own awakening at whatever they're experiencing, right? It's about witnessing it and holding in the loving, regardless if it's contrast to your own true north beliefs inside. So yeah, I just wanted to say that was really on my heart, and it really means a lot to me, because I know there's a lot of contrast going on in the world right now, and I really want to just apply loving, and staying in our loving is exactly how we heal all the core pieces.
I love that, Dawn. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And just to like add another piece, is that when someone is in fear, like apply the loving, like Dawn said, and not to make them wrong or bad or run away from them when that happens. Is like, if you are consciously wanting to shift the way people relate in the world, we get to do it together. So you can create more attachment harm, or you can actually consciously choose to be like, hey, I see you're having a thing, and I can love you there, and I'm not going anywhere. And exactly. I promise to just stay in that place of unwaveredness. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can have your feelings and emotions and communicate, because Dawn and I have a lot of communication in our charts.
Definitely.
Hey, I'm afraid of your fear, and it's scary, but I'm still here. And so we get to choose how we show up, and we get to choose how we slow down, and how we empathize with ourselves and others, and how we get to be in the loving. I really want to thank Scott Katamas and Love Coach Academy for being the muse to Self Love Show. as well as Sign Network for running us on over 40 pages right now, and getting our word out into the world and being just an epic, amazing network of healers and transformers and people who are just sharing the love and being that battery of love in the world. Is there anybody that you'd like to thank?
Well, first off, I would love again to just thank Sonja for showing up today. Like, truly, you're a breath of fresh air. I just love the work you're doing in the world, and may you just continue to bless everyone's life. And if you need an astrology chart, reach out to Sonja because she's great at what she does. Thank you again for showing up so authentically. It's so beautiful.
Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.